Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is David and today we're going to be looking at the lifeblood of our FPL teams. That is the 4 million defenders bracket. Now, this is one of the most exciting areas of fantasy football coverage. I always enjoy sinking my teeth into this, and those of you who've been around long enough will know that I've got a strong affinity on a personal level for this as well. Behind me, as ever, is that iconic number 7 shirt for Sheffield United from a couple of seasons ago, worn by the man himself, John Lundstrom. Not quite the original 4 million defender, but certainly the most iconic because of his just broken season where he was a 4 million defender playing in midfield. Not suggesting that we're going to have a sequel to JL7 anytime soon, but it is nice to see Sheffield United back in the Premier League with some 4 million defenders to stir up some nostalgia. And of course, 4 million defenders, very, very important for your teams. They're going to help you save some money to spend big in other areas and also help you potentially put together a very cheap budget rotation for your defenders. So let's dive in to have a look at who we think could be the best assets in this position for the start of the new campaign. And I have to say, I'm really pleased with the way that FPL has priced the 4 million defenders this year. In previous years, as I've said, we needed a bit of a broken player. We needed a cheat code player like Lundstrom, or possibly someone like Wan-Bissaka or Livramento to just stumble upon greatness by some elements of good fortune for them. That's what it took to get a playing FPL defender at 4 million. But it does look as if this year the decision makers up at FPL Towers have very much priced the game to give us some starting 4 million defenders just to make sure that we can have some fun with these guys. Because when we have a look at the way they have priced all of the newly promoted teams, we've got an absolute plethora of 4 million defenders who we already know are very, very important to their teams. In fact, of the 56 defenders that we have priced in the 4 million bracket so far, a quarter of them are from Burnley, Luton and Sheffield United. And we're going to break some of those down now because, as I said, many of them we already know are going to be playing very important parts for their teams for the start of the new campaign. So I'll just reel off the list of who we've got so far at Burnley. We've got Al Dakil, Bayer, Egan Riley, Ekdal, McNally, Taylor and Thomas, all at 4 million. And that's where we're going to start. They were, of course, the championship champions, so where else should we start than with the Clarets? Now, before we go into the specifics of each of those players, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to briefly assess Burnley's clean sheet potential for the start of the season, because when we look at these 4 million defenders, you want to be able to be relatively confident that they can keep a clean sheet from time to time. And that's why we're going to start there. Now, the thing about Burnley, them coming up into the Premier League this time around, it's a very, very different format for them than it was the last time they were here. And if you want more information on what that means for their whole squad, then you can check out our video and podcast that we did with Adam from No Nay Never podcast, detailing everything you need to know about Burnley for the new season. So make sure you check that out. I'll try and summarise as best I can now. They're a little bit like a poor man's Man City in the sense that they are playing a very similar play style, just with considerably less money. And it very much involves defending by possession, inverted fullbacks going into midfield, and really sort of passing other teams to death and controlling games that way. Now, are they going to be able to do that in the Premier League? It's hard to say, because it is a bit of a step up. But in terms of what they did in the Championship, it was very effective. So they finished the season with 21 clean sheets, which was the best in the division. They conceded just 35 goals, again, best in the division. They conceded 394 shots, again, best in the division. Shots on target conceded 134, so that was the second best. And the XGC for them, 38.2, again, best in the division. Not entirely a surprise, of course. They did win the division, so, naturally you would expect their defence to look good. But sometimes we've seen teams like Norwich, for example, come up and win the Championship with a very much, we'll score one more than you, thank you very much approach. Whereas Burnley are very good at scoring goals, but they can keep clean sheets as long as they can keep control of games. And it was very much something that they put together in the second half of the season, because in the first half of the season, between game weeks 1 and 20, their XGC per match was 1.08. In the second half of the season, between matches 21 and 46, their XGC per game was 0.64. So once they started to get the hang of that new system under Company, they very much started to improve and post some good numbers in that respect. Now, in terms of who they're playing at the start of the season, we have to have a look at their fixtures, and we must say that their fixtures aren't entirely encouraging in terms of owning someone consistently from this team, which is actually quite useful for 4 million defenders, because we need someone who we don't want to start all the time. So in the first 8 matches, Burnley are home to Man City, then away to Luton, home to Villa, home to Spurs, away to Forest, home to Man United, away to Newcastle, home to Chelsea. Now there's probably only 2 or 3 matches in that run that you maybe want to start a Burnley defender for, because you really need them to be playing against a team that you feel they can control possession against. Because when they go up against those bigger teams, they are likely to probably fall apart quite quickly, because they're just not used to having to defend in quite the same way as they were before under Dyche. So it's worth bearing that in mind before you delve too deeply into Burnley. But let's have a look now at some of the specific players then. I've reeled off the list before. What I've got on the screen right now is the team that was the most common 11 fielded by Company last season. And we have Maatsen and Roberts with the fullbacks. And I must say that they have been priced at 4.5. And if you check out our Burnley scout report, you will see that's probably actually a fair price, and maybe even worth paying that extra 0.5 for Roberts especially. But we've got Bayer and we've got Ekdal, who were the 2 players who seem to be the first choice at centre-back. And of course, as you will see from the spread of 4 million defenders, they are both in that category. Now, in terms of their attacking returns, there's not that much to write home about for these ones. So it's a bit of a shame. We're starting with Burnley. Just they earned that right by winning the championship. But actually, when you look at Bayer and Ekdal, 1 goal and 3 assists for Bayer, 1 goal and 1 assist for Ekdal. So not an incredible amount of attacking potential there, but there could be the possibility with these guys, with Bayer especially, of some bonus points, because he very much is in the mould of the modern day centre-back, although despite him being a modern-day centre-back, he is named after a much older one. Informally, they call him Beckenbayer, because he's very good at stepping out of defence and spreading the ball around. So there could be some bonus on offer with him. That's probably his most likely appeal. But as you can see here, 29 starts for him last season. He's very locked into this team. So, he is just the first-choice centre-back at Burnley for the new season. In terms of the others, Ekdal, I've already mentioned. There is a bit of a fight, to be honest, to be able to start alongside him. It'll either be Ekdal, Al-Dakhil or Dara O'Shea, he's a 4.5 million, and he's only recently joined. So it's hard to say who would necessarily go alongside him, to be honest. Which means of the 2, of the 2, 3, 4, you could play a centre-back. Bayer is you want to go for. Thomas, McNally, Egan Riley and Taylor, none of them were expecting them to trouble the first 11 this season. Taylor especially was just a backup centre-back last season, whilst those other 3 were largely out on loan. I suppose the only other thing to look out for is maybe what happens with Maatsen, because he is a Chelsea player currently, but he hasn't got a price in the game. Now, if he's going to get priced as a Chelsea player in the window, maybe he gets priced as a 4 million because he's unlikely to start there. And if Burnley bring him back, maybe he's at 4 million. But you need a bit of jiggery-pokery there for that to work out. So I wouldn't bank on that. In conclusion, the best 4 million defender at Burnley is Bayer. But we have to compare him with those elsewhere in the division, and we start with, in terms of that comparison, with Sheffield United, who came second in the Championship, and it is this area of the 4 million defender section that I am most excited about. It's obviously very on brand for me, with the old red and white striped shirt up behind me. Now, I have, just to clarify again, we are not going to be seeing, we don't think, a repeat of the John Lundstrom era. But there are still some guys who look really exciting. But let's start with Sheffield United's defensive capabilities first, because that is the bedrock of these guys. So, what are they like for clean sheets? So, last season, they conceded 39 goals, which was the joint second best in the division. They kept 19 clean sheets, which was actually the 4th best, so a little bit off Burnley there. Shots conceded 3rd best with 456. Shots on target conceded 130 was the 2nd best, and their XGC was 44.3, which was the 3rd best. So, not quite as defensively sound as Burnley. But you could potentially argue that they're more equipped to come up and stick everyone behind the ball and grind out some clean sheets in the Premier League than Burnley are, because Burnley very much are a team that has won that division by playing Man City-esque styles of play in terms of having possession, inverted fullbacks, etc. So, and we've also seen this Sheffield United team come up before with some similar personnel and do well for clean sheets before. Egan being one of those, Baldock as well, Sander Berge as well. three players who operate either in the defence or the midfield of that team that do have experience of clean sheets in the Premier League. So I don't think that we necessarily have to be too, despite the fact that their clean sheet potential in the Championship wasn't as good as Burnley, it can be a bit situational with this sometimes, and I think there's the possibility that maybe there's clean sheets on offer. Their fixtures are much nicer than Burnley's as well at the start of the campaign. So they've got Crystal Palace at home, game week 1, Nottingham Forest away, game week 2, Man City at home, game week 3. Of course, that'd be when you bench your 4 million, I would imagine. Then Everton at home, game week 4. Those first 4 look really nice. It gets harder after that. Spurs away, game week 5. Game week 6, it's home to Newcastle. Game week 7, away to West Ham. And then game week 8, away to Fulham. So it's really those first 4. Maybe the sort of person you stick in and maybe move on for someone else. Because there are lots of 4 millions this year. That is sometimes the disadvantage of a 4 million is who do I switch to if this doesn't work? Well, you've got lots of choices this year, especially across the newly promoted clubs. So that could be a good time to move away. So that's their fixtures then. Let's have a look at some of the specific individuals within this. There's a lot here to unpack because, in terms of who actually is priced 4 million, we've got Baldock, Basham and Norrington Davis. And all three of them have played a very big part in this team in recent years. 2 of them in the Premier League. Now, we should just first clarify that Basham, we are not expecting him to be as involved as he was before. He's 35 now, and he has mostly spent his recent years as a backup centre-back there. But with Norrington Davis and Baldock, there's a lot to be excited by. So Baldock, as you saw from the graphic on the previous page, was in that team for Sheffield United as the most likely starting 11 from 1 week to the next. And so I'll just read through that actually. So we've got Robinson, Egan, Ahmed Hodzic as the 3 centre-backs, and then Lowe on the left-hand side and Baldock on the right-hand side as the wing-backs. Now this team still does play with a sort of underlapping centre-back feel to it. So Ahmed Hodzic has done very well for attacking returns this season especially. The wing-backs aren't necessarily always as exciting as the centre-backs because the centre-backs get involved as well. So 33 starts for Baldock last season out of the 38 games that he was available for. It is worth saying that Jayden Bogle, who was the guy who he was competing with for a position, did have a lot of injury issues, and it's possibly a reason why he played so much. But, with Bogle coming back from injury and Baldock playing very well last season, it's possible that he's done enough to hold down his place. We should just clarify that the thing about Baldock is that he is, not necessarily as exciting a wing-back as it looks on paper, because his end product wasn't necessarily always amazing. And so what you'll see is 1 goal and 3 assists from a wing-back position is less than you would expect. And just to compare it with Ahmed Hodzic, who was just marauding to say the least. 6 goals for him, 2 assists, and that's from centre-back. So it's worth tempering your enthusiasm there. But either way, owning a Premier League wing-back at 4 million who's going to start every week does feel rather exciting. Now, it's not just the right-hand side to be excited about. There's Reece and Norrington Davis on the left-hand side. Now, the thing about him is that he started the first 15 games of last season, and then his injury in October, stopped him from being too much more involved. Max Lowe was the one who stepped in, and he made 24 starts, 1 goal, 5 assists. Now, he unfortunately is priced at 4.5 million this time around. So we would have to hope that Norrington Davis has stayed in the manager's thinking enough to earn his place back for this season. That's where pre-season is really going to help you, to be honest. Keep an eye on that, and we'll see what happens there. Got a couple of quotes here from the guys that helped us do our Sheffield United previews on fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. If you've not had a chance to read those yet, then do head over to the website and check those out, and we will have a video version of that very soon. What I've got on the screen is just George Baldock's heat map, and it does look very encouraging. So he's taking up good positions, but as I said, his end product, not necessarily all of that as good as you'd like. But the quotes that I think is the most useful is here from Ben from Blades Pod, who said that Max Lowe started a lot of games at left wing back last season, but will almost certainly drop out when Norrington Davis returns to fitness, which will hopefully be in time for the start of the season. So there is encouragement amongst the Sheffield United fan base that Norrington Davis is the first choice at left back when he's fit, and has done enough before his injury to earn his place back in the squad when he's back to full fitness. So do keep an eye on that for pre-season because, we could have 4 million wing-backs on both flanks at the same club in Sheffield United with some nice early fixtures. So that's very, very exciting, especially for those of us in the John Lundstrom fan club. Moving on to Luton now then. So Luton, they have got a number of 4 million defenders as well, and in actual fact, they were the first team to give us one with the price reveals that we had. So we've got Anderson, 4 million, Bell at 4 million, Burke and Potts. They all sound like firemen out of Trumpton, just going to say that now, which is quite nice when a team comes out of the Championship and they all sound like traditional names like that. So very much looking forward to getting involved in these guys. So what's their defensive potential like is the first question. And their defensive potential is not bad as well. So they conceded 39 goals last season. That was the joint second best. That's the same as Sheffield United. Their clean sheets was 20, so joint second best behind only Burnley. Shots conceded was 487, so that was the 7th best. So they were a team that definitely gave up a lot of chances, but they were very good at limiting where those shots came from and therefore able to limit the number of shots on target conceded. So their number of 122 shots on target conceded was actually the best in the Championship. And their goals conceded from open play was just 20. That was the joint best. But they were a little bit susceptible to set plays and penalties. So they conceded 13 goals there. That was the 7th best. But all of that rolled into one. Their XGC for the campaign was 43.80, which was the second best as well. So very much, despite having to come up through the playoffs, they were a very, very solid defensive unit in terms of allowing their shape to restrict what kind of shots the teams they were facing were able to put through them. And worth saying, to be honest, that it could be beneficial for the goalkeeper if they're going to concede shots of low quality, because goalkeepers always benefit from that. And Horvath's come in at 4.5 million, and the other goalkeepers there, who we hear have some possibility of being involved, also 4 million. But let's focus on the actual defenders themselves then. And the 4 millions that we've really got our eye on here, of course, we have to start with Amari Bell. He was the very first 4 million defender of this season in terms of those price reveals. He's already in about 20% of teams, and he actually started all but one of the 47 Championship/playoff games that he was available for last season, although he only got one goal. So historically, he was a left wing back, but he ended up, as you saw from the team we just showed there, he ended up being the fixture at left-sided centre-back. Now, that very much limited what he was able to bring to the team. Just the one goal and not too much in terms of attacking potential in the underlying figures as well. But, someone who is able to offer a route into this defence which has the ability to be solid with some regular starts is quite useful. And we'll come on to in a minute a way that you can actually rotate them with other teams. So there's Amari Bell. He's one to think about. But there's also Mads Anderson, who's also been priced at 4 million as well. He's come to Luton for a club record fee. And initially, people thought, bearing in mind that he was right-footed, that he wasn't going to provide too much competition for Bell on the left-hand side of the back three. But it's possible that he might. So we got a quote here from Rob Edwards, the manager, on the new signing, where he said, he's someone who can play anywhere across that back three for us. He's a real good defender, someone who loves defending, and we like ours to be able to do that. But he can play, and there is room to grow, like with anyone we want to bring in and sign. He's going to bring real good quality and competition into that position, and with us obviously losing Sonny Bradley this summer. But the position we see Amari Bell in now, Mads' arrival gives us real quality and competition in that area. So already worth clarifying that at this stage of the season, you have every right to be a bit worried as to whether or not Bell is necessarily going to start there. But it's fine, because his replacement, if Anderson does replace him, is also priced at 4 million. Now, you have to make sure you end up on the right one of those if you want to be invested in the Luton defence at that price. But that's where the pre-season is going to come in. Keep an eye on the FPL pre-season tracker that we've got on the Fantasy Football Scouts pre-season page. We're going to be tracking all the minutes across the whole pre-season campaign in terms of who's playing how often, what position they're playing in, what role they've got in the set pieces, goals, assists, etc. So keep an eye on that to see whether or not this indication that possibly Anderson might steal Bell's place, to see if that comes to fruition. And we should, by the start of game week 1, know which of the 4 million defenders at Luton is the most likely to start. The other ones, it's very difficult to get too excited about them. So Dan Potts was basically injured for most of last season, and so it's hard to say whether or not he's necessarily going to come back in. We've got Osho, who is actually very important in this defence, but he's 4.5, and he would have to come out of the team for Potts to go back in, and it sounds like Osho is not necessarily going to be relinquishing that slot anytime soon. We've got Reece Burke as well, but he's not particularly far down the pecking order. So yeah, it really is going to be Bell or Anderson at Luton, and the preseason will tell you which of those is the most important to go for. And so in terms of those fixtures then, they do actually look quite useful. They don't necessarily look good across the board, they're just useful at the right moments. Now, if you haven't had a chance to check out our defensive rotation pairing video yet, we released that when the fixtures came out. We had a look at Everton and Luton combined as a defensive rotation. Now, I know a lot of people have gone for Pickford, and you could rotate Pickford with the Luton goalkeeper once we know for absolute certain who that's going to be for the new season. Alternatively, could do it with these 4 million defenders. There is one at Everton, but we're not that excited or even that encouraged that he's going to play often this season. So you could maybe rotate your 4 million Luton defender with a Tarkowski or something like that, because the fixtures go like this. So if you pair them with Everton, then you would be able to get the following run. You would get Fulham at home in game week 1 with your Everton defender, Burnley at home in game week 2 with your Luton defender, then game week 3 and 4, Wolves at home with your Everton defender, and Sheffield United away with your Everton defender. And then you would get West Ham at home Fulham away in game week 5 with your Luton defender, Wolves at home in game week 6 with your Luton defender, and then you'd have a choice in game week 7 if you went for Everton or Luton, because they're going to be meeting at Goodison Park, and then in game week 8 you can use your Everton defender to start against Bournemouth. So there's a couple of slots in there where your Luton defender will fill the rather nasty looking gaps in Everton's fixtures, and so that's probably the best way to use them, bearing in mind that we are unlikely to get a 4 million defender at Luton outside of the centre-back options. As I said, with Sheffield United, we could get wing-backs, which is invariably more exciting. So that seems to be the best way to use Luton. Now, I mentioned Everton as a possible inclusion in that. What we've got on the screen finally then is just all of the 4 millions who have actually started games in the Premier League last season. And it's not very many. But we have to say the top of that list with 5 starts last season in the Premier League is Mason Holgate at Everton. Now, do we think that he's necessarily going to be featuring in Sean Dyche's plans? We're not sure. Unlikely. But we could potentially see Jared Branthwaite involved, because he had a very successful loan last season with PSV and done very well. Hasn't had the chance to actually impress Sean Dyche yet because he hasn't been there. He is involved in the European Under-21 Championships right now, so we'll have to wait and see at what point he gets involved in pre-season. But bearing in mind his stock is very high right now, and he has been involved in FPL before, it's worth keeping an eye on him, because if we can get him with regular starts in the start of the season, him rotated with Bell or Anderson could be quite useful. Now, outside of those guys, the everybody else's in terms of starts, we've got Tariq Lamptey up there with 3. He's largely been part of the ex-Lively gang for a long time, in the sense that he always looks very good, but seemingly can't seem to finish matches, and was actually only got 3 starts last season, was used rather sparingly under the new manager De Zerbi, but could this be the season where he finally gets fit and breaks back into the team? They've certainly got... He's not that far off the team in terms of personnel, because, Veltman, if he was to get an injury at right wing back or just normal right back, Lamptey is pretty like for like there in many ways. So that could happen. Then we also, he's not actually on the screen, but Malo Gusto's come in at 4 million for Chelsea. And if you think about it, he's probably only a Reece James injury away from being just a very cheap route into the Chelsea defence. And it must be said that Reece James has had a lot of injury problems in recent years. Now, he, a lot of the time, unfortunately, likes to tease us a little bit and comes in for 2 or 3 games at a time and then misses 1, and then comes in for 2 or 3 and misses 1. So it might be hard for you to really give Malo Gusto a proper run in the team. But do keep an eye on that, because that is a nice price. We've got Sergio Gomez at Man City as well, and it's his second season, which is normally when the new signings do much better. He is quite far off the team though, so I wouldn't get too excited about him, but just keep an eye. And Rico Lewis is much closer to the team, to be perfectly honest, and he's 4.5 million. So if I'm going to be going for a cheap City defender to sort of game the system, I'd much rather have him, if I'm honest. Just completing this list for the benefit of the podcast listeners, the 4 million defenders with starts last season. Holgate was top with 5. Richards at Palace with 4. Lamptey and Van Heck at Brighton with 3 each. Tompkins at Palace with 3. Cedric at Arsenal with 2. Now, it must be said, he's worth keeping an eye on because he was on loan last season. If he gets loaned to another Premier League team or even signed by one, which is entirely possible because he has relatively solid pedigree at a mid-table to lower to mid-table team in the Premier League. If he moves with that 4 million price tag, that's not bad. Got Callum Chambers at Aston Villa with 2 starts as well. Lascelles at Newcastle with 2 starts. Tanganga with 2 starts at Spurs, and then Mbabu at Fulham with 1, and Phillips at Liverpool with 1. So not really that much to write home about. It very much is the newly promoted teams that are offering the best 4 million starting defenders for this campaign. As I already said, it feels like a very deliberate decision from FPL Towers to price so many really integral players to those newly promoted teams at 4 million, which personally I quite like. I think it shows a good awareness of what that bracket is there for, and allows us to have a little bit more fun, because it has been a little while since we've had a 4 million defender who's really lit things up in quite the same way, even as Livramento has. I think Livramento is the most recent one. I'm loath to make too many Lundstrom comparisons because nobody will ever top that, but it's been a while since we've had a Wan-Bissaka or a Livramento, so this could be the year. I think Sheffield United, it has to be said, they're the ones that offer the most potential at the moment, because if you told me that all of the 4 million defenders that we've talked through here, those newly promoted clubs, were all going to start for their clubs this season, I'd be straight in on Bulldog just because of that wing-back role. So he's probably the one I've got my eye on at the moment, and we'll have a look and have a see about Norrington Davis. It's possible I might go for him over Bulldog just so I can make silly puns about Pirates of the Caribbean and call him the Commodore and all sorts of stuff like that, because we've already got started on the Fleck Republic. So if you have any ideas for cool-sounding bandwagon names this season, do let us know in the comments. We very much enjoy coining those. Well, with that, it's time for me to just remind you all to make sure you've got your Fantasy Football Scout membership sorted for the new season. We've got all manner of different benefits that will help you beat your mates at FPL in the most recent campaign. You will get access to the season ticker and all of its glorious interactivity. You'll get members articles, points projections, the Rate My Team tool, player comparisons, stat tables, live FPL data, all that sort of stuff. So make sure you've signed up for that. Also, I'd be remiss in my duty if I didn't remind you guys to like this video, subscribe to the Fantasy Football Scout YouTube channel as well, and hit that bell notification, because over the summer there's going to be loads of new content but no deadlines to help focus when you need to be checking them out. So make sure you're relying on those notifications to know that there's a new team reveal out, a new analysis of a certain position or a certain club. So we're going to be having a look at premium defenders, we're going to break down all the different Arsenal attackers, and we're going to break down a few other things as well, and Brighton attackers, and just other areas where we've got 50-50s and decisions between 3 or 4 players in the same price bracket. We're going to be going into great detail on all of those, so make sure you don't miss those videos and those podcasts when they come out. And with that, I will leave you fine folks to enjoy the rest of your tinkering, and I will see you next time.